In the dark room of the dilapidated orphanage, Sophie sat silently, her trembling hands clutching a tarnished silver pendant, which glistened faintly in the cold moonlight. Beside her, her two younger sisters, Lily and Emma, curled up in a fitful sleep, their faces pale and haggard with hunger. Sophie's eyes stopped on the name engraved on the pendant, Amelia Carte R. She didn't know who Amelia was, but the name awakened a strong sense of longing, a small ray of light in the dark night of despair. Who was Amelia, and could that name change their fate? Don't miss this mysterious and emotional story. Like, share, and subscribe to discover the truth behind the silver necklace with us. The night was cold, the kind that seeped into your bones no matter how many layers you wore. In the dimly lit room of an aging orphanage, Sophie sat hunched over, clutching a tarnished silver locket that glinted faintly in the moonlight. Her younger sisters, Lily and Emma, lay curled up beside her, their faces pale from hunger and exhaustion. Across the city, in a mansion glittering with chandeliers and opulence, Amelia Carte, a celebrated businesswoman, sat alone in her study. Surrounded by wealth and power, she wore the mask of success, but beneath it lay a hidden past, a past she had buried so deeply that even she refused to confront it. She had no idea that three girls with her name on their lips and her blood in their veins were about to step into her world and shatter everything she had carefully built. Who were they? What secrets would they uncover? And would the fragile threads of hope be enough to weave together the lives torn apart by pain and betrayal? The answers lay ahead in a journey none of them were prepared for. The abandoned children. The orphanage was a place where dreams withered and hope was crushed beneath the weight of survival. Its cracked walls, smeared with dirt and mold, seemed to whisper stories of the countless children who had come and gone, broken and forgotten. For Sophie, Lily, and Emma, this was their world, a cage of despair where every day was a battle to endure the relentless cruelty of life. Sophie, just 14 but hardened far beyond her years, had become the reluctant guardian of her two younger sisters. Lily, 11, was fiery and stubborn, with a spark in her eyes that refused to be dimmed despite the daily injustices they endured. And Emma, the baby of the trio at only 8, had grown pale and frail, her persistent cough a cruel reminder of how the orphanage slowly eroded the weak. Food was a rare luxury, rationed out in pitiful portions that barely kept them alive. Sophie often went without, her stomach gnawing with hunger just to give her sisters an extra spoonful of watery gruel. Nights were the worst, cold and endless, filled with the scuttling of rats and the muffled cries of children too young to understand why they had been abandoned. The caretakers ruled with iron fists, their cruelty a daily torment. Any sign of defiance was met with swift punishment. Sophie bore scars on her hands from scrubbing floors until her skin blistered and bled, punishment for standing up to one of them after Emma had been slapped for coughing during prayer. Lily, bold as she was, had learned to bite her tongue, though her eyes still burned with unspoken rebellion. Despite the bleakness, the sisters clung to each other, their bond the only anchor in a sea of despair. At night, when the shadows felt most suffocating, Sophie would wrap her arms around Lily and Emma, whispering stories of a better life, a life where they were free, together, and loved. But even her voice couldn't hide the trembling fear she carried deep within. One evening, as Sophie sat beside her sisters on their tattered mattress, she ran her fingers over the silver locket their mother had left behind, the only tangible memory of the life they'd once known. The locket was tarnished, its chain fragile, but it held an indescribable weight. As Sophie turned it over in her hands, something caught her eye. Beneath layers of grime and time, faintly engraved on the back were two words: Amelia Carte. Her breath caught. The name was unfamiliar, yet it struck a chord deep within her. Who was Amelia Carte? Why was her name etched onto their mother's locket? Sophie's mind raced with possibilities. Was this a clue to their past? A connection to the family they had lost? Or was it just a name? Another cruel trick of fate. Sophie didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. The locket, once just a reminder of their mother's love, now felt like a key, one that might unlock the truth behind the mysteries that had haunted them. She stared at her sisters, their faces softened in sleep, and silently vowed, whatever it took, she would find out who Amelia Carter was. But little did Sophie know, the path ahead would force them to leave the only home they'd ever known, thrust them into a world far more dangerous than the orphanage, and uncover secrets that would change their lives forever. The clue in the locket. The morning frost crept through the cracked window of the orphanage, biting at Sophie's fingers as she sat by the dim light of a flickering candle. In her hands lay the only remnant of their mother, a worn silver locket, dulled by years of neglect. It wasn't much, but to Sophie it was everything. She had kept it close, clutching it through cold nights and darker days, as though it held her mother's heartbeat, faint but enduring. Her hands trembled as she cleaned it for what felt like the 1,000th time. Every stroke of the cloth felt like a conversation, a silent plea for answers that the locket couldn't give. But today was different. As the grime faded under her careful touch, something shimmered faintly. A mark she had never noticed before. Sophie froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she angled the locket toward the candlelight. Letters, faint but deliberate, etched into the metal like a secret. She leaned closer, her pulse racing as she traced the inscription with her fingertip. Amelia Carter. The name felt heavy, like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples through her thoughts. Sophie's chest tightened as memories of their mother's gentle hands and soft lullabies flooded back. "Oh, when do you live here in London?" The name didn't spark immediate recognition, but it carried weight, as though it had been waiting for this moment to be discovered. "Sophie, what is it?" Lily's voice broke the silence, low and wary. She knelt beside her sister, her fiery gaze searching Sophie's face. Sophie held out the locket, her voice barely above a whisper. "It has a name, Amelia Carter." Lily's eyes narrowed as she studied the inscription. "Who is she? Do you think she knew Mama?" Emma stirred from the corner of the room, her frail frame barely visible beneath a patchwork of tattered blankets. She looked up, her wide eyes filled with a fragile hope that Sophie wasn't sure she could bear. "Do you think she could help us? Maybe she knows something. Anything." Sophie wanted to protect Emma's hope, but the weight of disappointment had taught her to be cautious. She had no idea who Amelia Carter was or what she might mean to them. But the name, it was a clue, however small, and that was more than they'd ever had. "Maybe she's a relative," Lily suggested, her tone caught between skepticism and curiosity. "Or maybe she's just some random person Mama knew. How would we even find her?" Sophie's grip on the locket tightened. "We'll find a way," she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at her. "If this name has even the slightest chance of leading us to answers, we have to try." Lily frowned. "Try us, Sophie. We've got no money, no leads, just that name, Amelia Carter. It's not enough." "It has to be," Sophie replied, her voice cracking with a mix of desperation and determination. "It's all we've got." Emma sat up, her small frame shivering despite the layers of blankets. "I think Mama would want us to try. Maybe Amelia is waiting for us too." The three sisters huddled close, their voices low but urgent as they plotted their next move. The cold of the orphanage seemed to recede for a moment as hope flickered between them, fragile but undeniable. The locket lay in the center of their circle, glowing faintly in the candlelight, as though daring them to uncover the truth. Who was Amelia Carter? A savior or a ghost of the past? A connection to their mother, or just another cruel twist of fate? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, but Sophie knew one thing: they couldn't stop now. The locket had spoken, and they would follow its lead into the unknown, no matter the cost. The journey to find their mother. The orphanage gates loomed in the dim light of dawn, their iron bars rusted and unyielding. Sophie, Lily, and Emma stood there for what felt like an eternity, their breaths visible in the chilly morning air. Behind them was the only home they had ever known, a place of cold meals, harsh punishments, and fleeting moments of stolen laughter. Ahead lay the unknown. For the first time in their lives, they had the power to choose their path. In Sophie's pocket, the locket engraved with the name Amelia Carter felt heavier than it should, as though it carried the weight of every unanswered question about their past. Amelia wasn't just a name. She was a symbol of hope, of a mother they barely remembered but longed to find. Sophie tightened her grip on the strap of their single battered bag. This wasn't just a journey to the city. It was a mission to uncover the truth. Charlotte's laugh was cold and bitter. Locking a child in a freezer is business. Threatening my employees? Tampering with food? You're not just a liar, Margot, you're a criminal. The final blow. Margot's face turned pale as one of the officers stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. Margot Everly, the officer began, his voice calm but authoritative. You're under arrest for fraud, endangerment, and criminal conspiracy. This is a mistake, Margot snapped, her voice rising in pitch. I'm innocent. She's lying. You can't do this to me. Charlotte held up the papers, her voice steady as she addressed the officers. Everything you need is right here, she said, handing over the evidence. Every plan, every detail, it's all there. She sabotaged my business, endangered my staff, and used every dirty trick she could think of to try to take this restaurant from me. The officer nodded, flipping through the papers. This is solid, he said to his partner. We've got her. Margot's desperation boiled over. You can't believe this, she shouted, standing abruptly. This is a setup. She's framing me. But before she could take another step, the second officer caught her arm, snapping the handcuffs into place. The metallic click echoed through the room, final and unyielding. Margot Everly, the officer continued, ignoring her protests, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Margot struggled, her voice rising into a panicked scream. You'll regret this, Charlotte. Do you hear me? You'll regret this? Charlotte stood firm, watching as the officers led Margot toward the door. For a moment, she felt a pang of something regret, perhaps for what their partnership had become, but it was fleeting. This wasn't just about her, it was about everyone Margot had hurt. As Margot was escorted out into the flashing lights, the door slammed shut behind her, leaving the restaurant in silence. Charlotte's moment. Lily and Yolanda stood near the kitchen, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Charlotte turned to them, her expression softening as she met their eyes. It's over, Charlotte said, her voice trembling slightly. She's gone. Lily stepped forward, her small frame shaking as she hugged Charlotte tightly. You did it, she whispered. You stopped her. Her. Charlotte knelt, wrapping her arms around Lily. We did it, she corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Yolanda joined them, placing a reassuring hand on Charlotte's shoulder. This isn't the end, you know, she said. The damage Margot caused, it'll take time to fix. I know, Charlotte replied, standing and looking around the restaurant. The tables were still empty, the walls still bore the weight of all they had endured. But for the first time, there was hope. But at least now we can rebuild. Margot was gone, but the shadow of her actions still lingered. Could Charlotte rebuild Lamer from the ashes, or would the damage prove too great? As Margot's trial loomed, new revelations threatened to surface. What secrets had Margot been hiding, and who else might be involved? Lily's courage had helped bring Margot to justice, but the fight wasn't over. Could the restaurant's reputation be saved, or was it too late? With Margot behind bars, Charlotte faced a new challenge, rebuilding trust with her customers. But what unexpected challenges lay ahead? Margot's arrest was just the beginning. As the pieces fell into place, Charlotte realized that the real fight for Lammer was far from over. Lily takes over the kitchen. The warm aroma of simmering sauces and fresh bread filled the air in Lammer as Charlotte stood in the center of the kitchen, her gaze steady on Lily. The young girl, still clutching a spatula in her small hands, looked up at Charlotte with wide, uncertain eyes. "Lily," Charlotte began, her voice soft but filled with conviction, "I've been watching you. Your passion, your talent, it's something rare, something extraordinary. And I think it's time you took charge of this kitchen." Lily froze, her breath catching in her chest. The words hung in the air, almost too big, too impossible to believe. You mean me," she stammered, her voice trembling with disbelief. And Sophie, she bore the weight of it all, her hope flickering like a candle in the wind. One evening, as they sat on the steps of a closed library, Sophie stared at the locket, her fingers tracing the engraving. "Amelia Carter," she whispered to herself. "Who are you? Why did you leave us?" Emma leaned against her, her head heavy on Sophie's shoulder. "Do you think she'll love us?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Sophie didn't answer right away. She looked out at the city, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark sky. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But I promise you, Emma, we'll find out." And as the night wrapped around them, the sisters held on to each other, their resolve unbroken despite the odds stacked against them. They didn't know what awaited them at the end of this journey, a warm embrace or a cold rejection, but they were determined to face it together. For better or worse, they would uncover the truth about Amelia Carter. Meeting Amelia, a clash of worlds. The estate was overwhelming. Marble columns stretched skyward, and iron gates seemed impenetrable, guarding a world so far removed from anything Sophie, Lily, and Emma had ever known. The sisters stood hesitantly at the entrance, their clothes patched and frayed, a stark contrast to the polished grandeur before them. Sophie clutched the locket so tightly that its edges dug into her palm, grounding her against the tidal wave of anxiety swelling inside her. "This is it," Sophie whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the wind. "This is where she lives." "She doesn't even know we exist," Lily muttered, her arms crossed against her chest, as much for warmth as for protection. "What makes you think she'll care?" "She has to care," Emma said softly, her voice trembling. Her wide, hopeful eyes reflected the golden glow of the mansion's towering windows. Why else would she leave this behind? Sophie squared her shoulders and stepped forward, pressing the ornate doorbell. A resonant chime echoed, as though announcing the arrival of trespassers rather than visitors. The silence that followed was deafening, each second a reminder of how out of place they were. Sophie fought the urge to run, to drag her sisters back into the shadows they had always inhabited. Instead, she gripped the locket tighter. After what felt like an eternity, the door swung open, revealing a butler with a face carved in stone. His gaze swept over them, lingering briefly on their tattered appearance, before settling into a practiced indifference. "State your business," he said, his voice clipped and impersonal. "We're here to see Amelia Carter," Sophie said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "It's about this." She held up the locket, its polished surface catching the light. The butler's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked momentarily to the locket. He stepped back slightly, as though to shield the grandeur behind him from their encroaching presence. "Miss Carter does not entertain unannounced visitors," he said firmly. "I suggest you leave." "Please," Sophie said, stepping forward, desperation cracking through her voice. "This locket, it belongs to her. We just need to talk to her. Just for a moment." The butler's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Sophie thought he would shut the door in their faces. But then he sighed, as though burdened by their persistence. "Wait here," he said, disappearing into the mansion without another word. Minutes dragged into an agonizing eternity. The sisters huddled together on the cold stone steps, their breaths visible in the chilly evening air. Lily muttered under her breath, questioning whether this was a mistake, while Emma clung to Sophie's arm, her silent presence a small but vital anchor. Finally, the door opened again. But this time, it wasn't the butler. Amelia Carter stepped into view, a woman of sharp angles and undeniable presence. Her tailored suit, sleek dark hair, and piercing eyes radiated authority. She looked at them with a mixture of irritation and curiosity, her gaze as cold and calculating as the steel gates behind them. "Who are you, and why are you here?" Her voice was low, steady, and carried an edge that silenced the night. Sophie swallowed hard, stepping forward. She held out the locket, her hands trembling. We believe you're our mother," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Amelia's eyes flicked to the locket, her composed exterior faltering for just a heartbeat. Recognition flashed in her eyes, a fleeting moment of vulnerability that was quickly masked by suspicion. "You believe I'm your mother," she repeated, her tone laced with incredulity, almost mockery. "Because of a piece of jewelry." "No," Sophie said quickly, her voice rising with emotion. "Because we have nothing else. Because this locket is the only clue we have. And because every step we've taken has led us here to you." Amelia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Do you have any idea how many people have tried to fabricate some connection to me, to get their hands on my money, my power?" Her gaze hardened. "You think waving a locket in my face will convince me you're not just another set of liars?" "It's yours, isn't it?" Lily interrupted, her voice fierce. "You recognize it, you know it's not a lie." Amelia stiffened, her hand twitching slightly as if she wanted to reach for the locket but stopped herself. Her eyes narrowed. "Even if it is mine," she said coldly, "it doesn't mean you are." Emma, who had been silent, stepped forward, her voice soft but piercing. "We're not lying," she said, her tears spilling freely now. "We've been looking for you for so long. Please, just give us a chance." For the first time, Amelia's icy exterior cracked, a flicker of something pain perhaps crossing her face. She took a step back, her gaze shifting between the locket and the girls. "If this is some kind of scam," she said finally, her voice quieter but no less sharp, "you'll regret ever stepping foot here." "It's not," Sophie said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "We'll do whatever it takes to prove it. Just let us try." Amelia studied them for what felt like an eternity before sighing, a sound heavy with weariness and something else, reluctant hope, perhaps. "Fine," she said. "Come in." Inside the mystery. The sisters followed her into the mansion, their footsteps echoing against the marble floors. The opulence of the place was staggering, with walls adorned with priceless artwork and chandeliers casting a golden glow over everything. But the weight of the moment made it hard to appreciate the beauty around them. Amelia led them into a grand study, her movements brisk and deliberate. She stopped at a desk, opened a hidden drawer, and pulled out an identical locket. Holding it up, she turned to face the girls, her expression unreadable. "This locket," she said, her voice low, "was stolen from me years ago. If you are who you claim to be, then explain why I have this and no memory of ever having daughters." Hook for the next part. The air in the room grew heavy with silence. The sisters exchanged nervous glances, their hope teetering on the edge of despair. As Sophie opened her mouth to respond, a sudden knock at the door interrupted them, and the butler entered, his face unusually pale. "Miss Carter," he said hesitantly, "there's someone else here to see you. And he claims to know the truth about these girls." The revelation sent a jolt of fear and anticipation through the sisters. Who could this mysterious visitor be, and what secrets did he hold about their past? A test of trust. Amelia sat behind her massive mahogany desk, her sharp eyes scanning the faces of the three sisters standing before her. The silence in the room was suffocating, broken only by the faint ticking of an ornate clock on the wall. Sophie, Lily, and Emma stood frozen, their hearts pounding as they waited for Amelia to speak. The locket, now resting on the desk, gleamed under the soft light, a tangible reminder of the bond they claimed to share. "You say you're my daughters," Amelia began, her voice calm but laced with skepticism. "But words are cheap. I've been lied to more times than I care to count. If you want me to believe you, if you want to prove you're not just after my fortune, then earn it." Sophie's jaw tightened, but she held Amelia's gaze. "What do you want us to do?" Amelia leaned forward, her fingers steepled. "I own many businesses, large and small. One of them, a struggling little company, is in desperate need of restructuring. You'll work there starting tomorrow. No special treatment, no exceptions. If you truly carry my blood, you'll have the intelligence, the resilience, and the determination to succeed." Lily's eyebrows shot up. "You want us to fix a failing company?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We've spent our whole lives surviving on scraps. How are we supposed to?" "That's the test," Amelia interrupted sharply. "If you're as capable as you claim to be, you'll figure it out." Emma, her frail form trembling, spoke up softly. "And if we fail?" Amelia's gaze softened for a brief moment, but her tone remained firm. "Then you'll prove that I've been a fool to entertain this notion at all." The challenge hung heavy in the air, a barrier as daunting as the gates of Amelia's estate. Sophie clenched her fists. This wasn't just about proving their lineage. It was about survival, about carving out a place in a world that had always shut them out. At the company, a cold welcome. The next morning, The sisters arrived at a nondescript office building in the heart of the city. The faded sign above the door read, Carter Company Logistics, but the bustling streets outside told a different story. This was a forgotten corner of Amelia's empire. Inside, they were greeted with raised eyebrows and thinly veiled hostility. "New hires?" a grizzled manager asked, looking them up and down. "You don't look like you belong in an office." "We're here on behalf of Amelia Carter," Sophie said, holding her head high. "She assigned us to help turn this place around." The mention of Amelia's name sent a ripple through the room. Some employees exchanged worried glances, while others rolled their eyes. The manager scoffed. "Figures. She sends in a bunch of amateurs to clean up her mess. Good luck, you'll need it." Building suspense, a hint of mystery. As the sisters settled into their new roles, they quickly realized the magnitude of the challenge. The company was plagued by inefficiency, disorganization, and a workforce that had long since lost hope. Sophie dived headfirst into the logistics, poring over stacks of paperwork late into the night. Lily's quick wit shone as she navigated tense meetings and brokered deals with reluctant clients. Emma, though physically weaker, proved invaluable with her sharp eye for detail. But amidst the chaos, strange things began to surface. Financial records didn't add up. Certain employees acted strangely when asked simple questions. And then there was the locked office in the back, marked only with a plaque reading private. "Have you noticed how no one talks about what happened before the company started failing?" Sophie whispered to Lily one evening as they worked late. "It's like they're hiding something." "Maybe they are," Lily replied, her eyes narrowing. "And if they are, we need to find out what." As the days stretched into weeks, the sisters worked tirelessly, each small victory strengthening their resolve. But with every step forward, they uncovered more questions than answers. Why had Amelia chosen this company of all places for their trial? And what secrets lay hidden in its shadowy past? One night, as Sophie unlocked her office to leave, she found a folded piece of paper slipped under the door. Unfolding it, her heart stopped at the chilling words scrawled in shaky handwriting, "Go back to where you came from before it's too late." Who had left the note? And what dark truths were waiting to be revealed? The sisters knew they had no choice but to press on. The test was no longer just about proving their worth to Amelia, it was about survival. Emma's collapse. A life hangs in the balance. The boardroom, usually filled with the hum of discussions and the clatter of papers, was eerily silent as Sophie's voice echoed across the table. Her pitch was fervent, her words carefully chosen as she laid out a bold strategy for revitalizing the company. Lily sat to her right, nodding supportively, interjecting occasionally to back her sister's points. Emma, however, sat farthest from the center, her pale face and trembling hands hidden in the shadows of her sister's intensity. As Sophie reached the crescendo of her presentation, a soft, choked sound broke through the room. Emma gasped, her body swaying unsteadily. The entire boardroom froze as her chair scraped against the floor, and then she collapsed. The world seemed to tilt as her fragile body hit the ground with a sickening thud. "Emma!" Sophie screamed, her voice raw with panic. She rushed to her sister's side, her heart hammering in her chest. Lily dropped to her knees, desperately calling Emma's name, her hands shaking as she tried to rouse her. Around them, the executives exchanged startled looks, some rising to help, others too stunned to move. But one person stood motionless: Amelia. Her cold demeanor cracked as her eyes locked onto Emma's still form. For a brief moment, a flicker of pain, of fear, crossed her face. Amelia takes control. "Clear the room." Amelia's voice sliced through the chaos, commanding immediate obedience. Her tone, sharp and authoritative, left no room for hesitation. "Someone call an ambulance now." The room emptied quickly, save for Amelia, Sophie, and Lily. Amelia knelt beside Emma, her usually steady hands trembling as she pressed her fingers to Emma's wrist, searching for a pulse. It was there, but faint, too faint. "She's burning up," Amelia muttered, her voice a mixture of frustration and fear. Without waiting for anyone to suggest otherwise, she scooped Emma into her arms with surprising strength. Sophie and Lily stared, speechless. As their mother, this woman who had been nothing but cold and detached carried their sister out of the room with a determination that could shatter stone. The hospital and a mother's resolve. The hours at the hospital stretched endlessly. Sophie and Lily sat side by side in the sterile waiting room, their hands tightly clasped together, as the occasional doctor passed by with unreadable expressions. Amelia stood apart, her arms crossed, her face unreadable, but her eyes betrayed her turmoil. When the doctor finally emerged, his grave expression sent a chill through all three women. "Emma's condition is critical. It's a combination of severe anemia and prolonged malnutrition. We've stabilized her for now, but she'll need long-term care and attention. Amelia's jaw tightened. She'll have the best care money can buy, she said firmly. Turning to Sophie and Lily, she added, pack your things. You're coming home with me. Home? Sophie's voice was sharp with skepticism. You think we're just going to trust you after all this? Amelia stepped closer, her piercing gaze meeting Sophie's. You don't have a choice. Emma's life is on the line. Do you really want to gamble with her health? Reluctantly, Sophie and Lily agreed, their worry for Emma outweighing their mistrust of Amelia. Life at the estate, a web of secrets. Back at the sprawling Carter estate, Emma was placed in the care of private doctors and nurses. Sophie and Lily watched over her day and night, rarely leaving her bedside. Amelia, meanwhile, kept a calculated distance, her presence lingering in the background like a shadow. She's doing this for show, Sophie muttered one evening as she adjusted Emma's blankets. She doesn't care about us. She just wants to control us. Lily, ever the peacekeeper, hesitated. Maybe she's trying. People can change, Sophie. People like her don't change, Sophie snapped. We need to stay on our guard. But as days turned into weeks, Amelia's actions began to paint a different picture. She personally oversaw Emma's care, meeting with the doctors daily, and began making subtle gestures of kindness, leaving books at Emma's bedside, preparing Lily's favorite tea, even sitting silently in the room, while Sophie and Lily tended to Emma. The note, a warning in the dark. One night, as Sophie returned to the room she shared with Lily, she noticed something unusual. Slipped under the door was a crumpled piece of paper. Her heart raced as she unfolded it. The message, scrawled in uneven handwriting, sent a chill down her spine. Leave now or you'll regret staying. Sophie's hands shook as she stared at the note. What the hell is this? She whispered, her mind racing with questions. Who had written it? Was it a warning, a threat, or something more sinister? She felt a sinking realization this wasn't just about Emma's health anymore. There were deeper secrets buried within the walls of the Carter estate, and someone didn't want them uncovered. The Carter estate, with its grand halls and lush gardens, held more than just the weight of Amelia's fortune. It held secrets that could destroy lives. As Sophie tucked the note into her pocket, she vowed to uncover the truth. But would the truth bring them closer to Amelia, or shatter the fragile bond they were beginning to form? In the stillness of the night, Sophie whispered to Lily, we can't leave now. Not until we know what she's hiding. The shocking truth unveiled. The crisp sound of papers rustling broke the silence in the Carter estate's private study. Amelia sat at her desk, her polished demeanor betraying no emotion, but her hand trembled ever so slightly as she unfolded the envelope. Across from her, Sophie, Lily, and Emma waited in tense silence, their eyes darting between one another. This was the moment they had both dreaded and longed for, a confirmation of who they truly were. The DNA test results were straightforward, clinical, devoid of the weight of the truth they carried. Yet, when Amelia read the words "allowed probability of maternity," 99.9% the air in the room shifted. The mighty Amelia Carter, the unshakable business tycoon, was rendered momentarily speechless. Her steely eyes softened, and for the first time she looked not like the formidable woman the world revered, but like someone who had just been handed a second chance at a life she thought she had lost forever. You're my daughters, her voice faltered, barely above a whisper, as though speaking the words aloud would make them too real to bear. Her fingers clutched the paper as if it might crumble under the weight of her emotions. All these years I thought I would never. She stopped, her words swallowed by a wave of memories that crashed over her. The ghost of her past resurfaced, the heartbreak of losing her children, the years of believing she was unworthy of love, the wall she had built around her heart to survive. The sisters' reactions. Sophie's face twisted with a mix of relief and anger. So it's true, she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the charged atmosphere. You left us. You built this empire while we rotted in that hellhole. Amelia flinched, her hands gripping the edge of the desk. You don't understand. I don't need your excuses, Sophie snapped, her voice rising. You had a choice, and you chose yourself. Lily, ever the mediator, placed a hand on Sophie's arm. Stop, Sophie, she whispered. Turning to Amelia, her voice softened. Is it true? Did you know about us? Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes, something no one in the room had ever seen before. I thought I lost you, she said, her voice breaking. I was told. She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. I was told you wouldn't survive, that I couldn't have children again. I thought it was over. Emma, still weak from her illness, spoke softly but firmly. And now, what do you want from us? Amelia's gaze flickered to Emma, her expression a mixture of guilt and yearning. I don't want anything. She hesitated, the words catching in her throat. I want to try. If you'll let me. A fragile bridge. E. The silence that followed was deafening. The sisters exchanged uncertain glances, each wrestling with the tidal wave of emotions threatening to consume them. Could they trust her? Could they forgive her? I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Sophie said, her voice trembling with rage and pain. But for Emma's sake, I'll stay. For now. Lily nodded, her expression unreadable. We'll see what kind of person you really are. Amelia's shoulders slumped, a visible crack in her composed exterior. That's all I can ask. As the sisters left the study, Amelia remained seated, staring blankly at the DNA results. Her hand reached instinctively for the locket she always wore, a small silver heart she had never opened in decades. Inside it was a photo of her lost family, now no longer just a memory. But the past had its own way of haunting. As Amelia opened her desk drawer, her hand brushed against an envelope marked confidential. Inside was something that had been hidden for years, a document that could shatter the fragile bridge she had just begun to build with her daughters. Would the truth set them free, or destroy them all over again? A heartbreaking past. The fire crackled softly in the grand study, casting flickering shadows on Amelia's face. For once, the unbreakable tycoon seemed small, fragile, as though the weight of her memories might crush her at any moment. She clutched the silver locket around her neck, a relic she rarely acknowledged, let alone opened. Tonight, however, the secrets it held could no longer remain buried. I owe you the truth, Amelia began, her voice trembling but determined. Her daughters sat across from her, their eyes wary, their hearts caught between resentment and curiosity. I haven't been the mother you deserve, not because I didn't love you, but because I was afraid. She took a shaky breath, the past clawing at her throat. Years ago, I was married to your father, a man I once believed was my everything. But that love turned to fear, and fear turned to torment. He wasn't just controlling, he was cruel. He saw my ambitions, my dreams, as threats to his pride. The room fell deathly silent, the air heavy with the weight of her confession. When I found out I was pregnant with you three, I thought it might change him. I thought he'd become the man I fell in love with. But instead, he became worse. Her voice cracked, her hands trembling as they gripped the locket tighter. I stayed as long as I could, hoping to shield you. But the day he raised his hand to me, while I carried you, her words faltered, a single tear slipping down her cheek. I knew I had to leave. A choice that tore her apart. Her gaze flickered to Sophie, Lily, and Emma, each of their expressions a mix of shock and pain. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, Amelia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I walked out that door with nothing but the clothes on my back and the hope that anyone would take us in. She paused, the memories too raw to articulate. But he found us. He threatened to destroy me, to take you from me forever. And so I did what I thought was best. I let go. I placed you in the care of people I thought could protect you while I built a life strong enough to fight for you. I told myself it was temporary. But life, it doesn't always go as we plan. Her voice broke entirely, and for the first time, her daughters saw not the cold, composed woman they had come to resent, but a mother who had made an impossible choice. I thought I'd lost you forever. And maybe I don't deserve to have you back. But if there's even a sliver of a chance, I need you to know the truth. The weight of the truth. Sophie's fist clenched at her sides, her voice shaking with anger and confusion. You abandoned us. You chose to leave. Do you have any idea what we went through? I do, Amelia replied, her eyes filled with sorrow. And I will carry that guilt until my dying breath. But I never stopped loving you. Never. Lily's voice, softer but no less emotional, broke the tension. Why didn't you come back for us? Why now? Amelia hesitated, the locket still clutched tightly in her hand. Because I thought you'd moved on, and because I was a coward. As Amelia's daughters processed her words, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. There was more to the story, something she hadn't told them, something she couldn't. In the depths of her study drawer lay a sealed envelope, its contents capable of changing everything. What had truly kept her from returning? And what would happen if her daughters discovered the final piece of the puzzle? The truth was far from over. Would this fragile bond they were building survive the storm yet to come? Confronting the pain, the storm within. The air in the room felt suffocating, heavy with emotions that had been buried for years, but now erupted like a volcano. Sophie stood at the center, her fists clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her voice trembled, not from fear but from the sheer weight of her anger. "You abandoned us," she said, each word sharp as a blade. Her eyes, normally so full of fire, now brimmed with tears. "Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up believing you weren't worth staying for? To wonder every single day why your mother didn't love you enough?" Amelia flinched as if Sophie had physically struck her. She began, but her voice faltered. Her hands trembled as she reached out, only to let them fall back to her sides when Sophie recoiled. "You don't understand what I went through, what I had to do to survive." Sophie's laughter was bitter, a sound that cut through the tension like shattered glass. "Survive? We were children. We didn't get the luxury of running away. Amelia, we survived too, but we did it without you." Lily, the mediator. Lily, ever the peacemaker, stepped between them, her own face streaked with tears. "Stop," she said softly, yet firmly, her voice breaking through the storm. "This isn't going to fix anything." She turned to Sophie, her expression pleading. "I know you're hurt. I know what it's like to feel abandoned. But yelling won't change what happened. It won't bring us peace." Sophie shook her head, her voice cracking. "She left us, Lily. She left us to fend for ourselves while she rebuilt her life. How do you just forgive that?" "I don't know," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know that carrying this anger isn't healing us. It's breaking us apart even more." Emma, the voice of wisdom. In the corner, Emma sat quietly, her body weak from illness but her mind sharp. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft yet commanding, forcing everyone to listen. "Sophie, we've been fighting our whole lives for food, for safety, for each other. Maybe it's time we stop fighting and start listening." She turned to Amelia, her gaze piercing. "You say you left to protect us, but why didn't you come back? Why did you let us believe we weren't enough?" Amelia's breath hitched as she struggled to find the words. "Because I was afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Afraid that you'd hate me. Afraid that the world I left behind would hurt you if I tried to come back. I thought I was doing what was best, but I see now that I was wrong." The weight of regret. Amelia sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I know I can't undo the pain I caused, but I've spent every day of my life thinking about you, wondering if you were okay. And now that you're here, I realize that nothing I've done will ever be enough to make up for the years I lost. All I can ask for is a chance to prove that I never stopped loving you." The fragile first step. Sophie's jaw tightened, her emotions raging like a storm within her. She opened her mouth to speak but found no words, only the sound of her labored breathing. Lily placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, silently urging her to consider what was at stake. Emma, though frail, stood and crossed the room, taking Amelia's trembling hand in hers. "You've hurt us," Emma said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But if there's one thing we've learned, it's that love can't grow where hate lives. If we want to heal, we have to let go of the past, even if it's just a little at a time." The hook, a turning point. As Sophie stared at the fragile connection forming between Emma and Amelia, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. But could she let go of her pain long enough to embrace it? Could they truly rebuild the family they had lost? In that moment, the question hung heavy in the air. Was this the beginning of a new chapter, or just another wound waiting to be opened? The answer would shape their futures and their hearts. Would Sophie take that first step, or would her pain forever stand in the way of forgiveness? The answer awaited in the next chapter of their lives. A chance for redemption. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic tick of a grandfather clock echoing faintly in the hallway. Amelia sat at her desk, staring at an array of papers she couldn't focus on. Her hands trembled, clutching a framed photograph of her daughters as children's smiling faces frozen in time, untouched by the pain her absence had caused. Her chest tightened as Emma's pale, unconscious face invaded her mind. She had already lost so much. She couldn't lose Emma too. That night, Amelia made a decision that would change everything. The plan. The plan. Her voice rang firm as she addressed her personal assistant. "Call Dr. Bennett in Zurich. Secure a suite in the hospital and schedule the earliest consultation. I want Emma transferred by tomorrow." Zurich. Sophie's voice cut through the conversation as she stepped into the room, her tone sharp and skeptical. "What's the point? You think flying her halfway around the world will fix everything? Fix us." Amelia turned to her eldest daughter, the raw accusation in Sophie's eyes stabbing through her carefully constructed armor. "I don't know if I can fix everything," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But I'll do everything in my power to make things right. I'll start with Emma." A family fractured. The next morning, Sophie, Lily, and Amelia gathered around Emma's bed as paramedics prepared to move her. Sophie's arms were crossed, her expression a mask of defiance. Lily, always the peacemaker, reached out to squeeze Amelia's hand. "Mom," she whispered, her voice gentle but firm. "This isn't just about Emma's treatment. It's about whether you're truly ready to be our mother." Amelia nodded, her gaze fixed on Emma's frail form. "I know," she said quietly, "and I won't run away this time." As the ambulance doors closed, Sophie's steely facade cracked just a little. "You'd better mean it," she muttered, "because if you fail us again, there won't be another chance." The flight of silent prayers. The flight to Zurich was long and heavy with unspoken words. Amelia sat next to Emma, holding her daughter's cold, fragile hand. She couldn't stop staring at the oxygen mask covering Emma's face, her heart aching with a mix of guilt and determination. "Emma," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I'm sorry. For everything. For every moment I wasn't there when you needed me. But I'm here now, and I'll never leave your side again." Lily, sitting across the aisle, gave a small, encouraging smile. Sophie, meanwhile, sat with her arms crossed, staring out the window, her jaw clenched. She didn't trust Amelia's promises, not yet. Zurich, a ray of hope. The hospital in Zurich was pristine and welcoming, its sleek glass facade glimmering under the afternoon sun. Amelia spared no expense, arranging for Emma to be seen by the world's top specialists. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, explaining an aggressive but promising treatment plan. Amelia listened intently, nodding at every instruction, her mind racing with plans to ensure Emma's recovery. While Emma underwent initial tests, Amelia turned to Sophie and Lily. "I want us to stay here together as a family," she said firmly. "Emma needs all of us." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "A family?" she repeated, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You think it's that simple? You think a few hospital visits will erase years of abandonment?" "No," Amelia replied, her voice steady despite the pain in her chest. "But I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can be better, that I can be the mother you deserved all along." The healing process begins. Over the next few weeks, Emma's condition began to stabilize. Amelia rarely left her side, often falling asleep in the chair beside her bed. She read Emma stories from her childhood, recounting the nights she used to sing lullabies to her daughters, a memory long buried under layers of pain and regret. One evening, as Amelia finished reading aloud, Emma opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "You're here," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with a hint of warmth. "I thought you'd leave again." Amelia's heart clenched. "I'll never leave again," she vowed. "You have my word." The hook, a fragile trust. While Emma's health showed signs of improvement, Sophie's walls remained unyielding. Watching her mother's efforts stirred conflicting emotions, hope mingling with years of resentment. Could Amelia truly earn back the trust she had shattered, or was this redemption too little, too late? And as the days passed, the sisters began to notice cracks in Amelia's seemingly perfect life. Secrets she had long buried threatened to resurface, threatening to unravel everything she was fighting for. Would Amelia's renewed dedication be enough to heal the wounds of the past? Or would the ghosts of her mistakes tear them apart once more? The answer loomed in the uncertain shadows of their fragile reunion. A bond rekindled in the shadows of redemption. The hospital room in Zurich began to transform into an unlikely sanctuary. The walls, once sterile and suffocating, now echoed with hesitant laughter and tender conversations. This was no ordinary reunion, it was a battle to rebuild the foundation of a fractured family. Each moment was a small victory, each word an attempt to bridge years of pain and estrangement. Amelia, once the epitome of poise and control, found herself vulnerable in ways she had never been before. For the first time in decades, she wasn't managing a company, she was fighting to become the mother her daughters deserved. Teaching through the scars. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, Amelia sat by Emma's bedside with her laptop open. Sophie and Lily watched from across the room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Amelia gestured for them to come closer, revealing a financial report on the screen. "This," she began, pointing to a column of numbers, "represents the revenue from one of my smaller ventures. But look closer, see these dips here. That's what happens when you focus on profit and forget the people who make it possible." Sophie raised an eyebrow, her tone sharp. "And what about the people you forgot? What happens to them?" Amelia's hands trembled slightly as she closed the laptop. She turned to face her daughters, her voice steady but filled with regret. "I can't undo what I've done, but I can teach you everything I've learned so you never make the same mistakes I did. Let me show you how to lead, not just with strategy but with heart." Lily placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder. "If you're willing to teach, we're willing to learn. Right, Soph?" Sophie hesitated, her wall still firmly in place, but she nodded. "We'll see." Love in the small moments. In between lessons on business acumen, love began to seep into the cracks of their broken relationship. It wasn't grand gestures or heartfelt speeches, it was in the small, unspoken moments. Amelia would bring Emma her favorite herbal tea without being asked. Lily would insist on styling Amelia's hair, claiming she needed a youthful makeover. Sophie, though still guarded, would leave sticky notes with sharp but encouraging messages on Amelia's desk. "Don't mess this up, boss lady." One night, after Emma had fallen asleep, the three sisters found Amelia curled up on the couch in the waiting room. She was holding an old photo of them as toddlers, tears streaming silently down her face. Without a word, Sophie draped a blanket over her shoulders. The gesture said what words could not. "We're trying." A family's first laughter. Weeks into Emma's treatment, Amelia insisted on a game night in Emma's room. At first, the idea seemed absurd, but slowly, laughter filled the air. Lily's infectious energy made the rules irrelevant. Sophie's sarcasm had them all in stitches, and Amelia laughed like she hadn't in years. For the first time, they felt like a family, not perfect, but real. Yet, even amidst the laughter, Amelia couldn't shake the shadow of her own fears. She was still keeping secrets, still afraid that the truths she hadn't shared would shatter the fragile bond they were building. As the family found themselves inching closer to healing, the cracks in their foundation remained. Sophie couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that there was more to Amelia's past than she had admitted. Lily, though optimistic, felt the weight of holding everyone together. And Emma, though slowly recovering, carried her own silent fears about what the future held. Then came the call, a late-night interruption that sent Amelia's face into a mask of worry. She whispered into the phone, her voice low but urgent. When she hung up, she turned to her daughters, her expression unreadable. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. The room fell silent. Was their fragile bond strong enough to withstand what Amelia was about to reveal? And as the storm gathered on the horizon, one question loomed: could love truly conquer the mistakes of the past? Or would the truth pull them apart all over again? The shadows of betrayal. The night was unusually quiet at the mansion, a stillness that seemed to carry an unspoken warning. Amelia had been working late in her study, her focus unwavering as she reviewed the quarterly reports for her empire. The faint hum of success that had begun to rebuild her fractured life now faced an unseen threat lurking in the darkness. An enemy resurfaces. It began subtly: unusual delays in supply chains, whispers of Amelia's company losing lucrative contracts, and confidential files leaking into the hands of competitors. The final blow came in the form of a headline splashed across every major news outlet: Carter Industries under fire for financial misconduct. Amelia stared at the screen, her face a mix of shock and fury. She knew who was behind this: a ghost from her past, Victor Sterling, her former business partner turned nemesis. Years ago, she had exposed his embezzlement, driving him out of the industry. Now, he had returned, intent on dismantling everything she had built. The family's trial. The attacks weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. Victor had unearthed pieces of Amelia's past she had fought so hard to bury. Old scandals and fabricated accusations flooded the media, casting doubt on her integrity. Sophie, Lily, and Emma watched in disbelief as the world Amelia had built began to crumble. "We need to fight back," Sophie declared, slamming her fist on the dining table. Her fiery determination was palpable, but the cracks in her voice revealed her fear. "How?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "We don't even know where to start." Emma, still recovering, whispered from her seat. "Together. If we fall apart now, he wins." Secrets and sacrifices. As the family rallied, Amelia revealed the depth of her fears. "Victor knows everything," she admitted. "He's not just targeting the company, he's targeting us." The room fell silent as her daughters absorbed the weight of her words. Sophie stepped forward, her voice laced with both anger and resolve. "Then we hit him where it hurts. We protect what's ours." Amelia hesitated, but the strength in her daughter's eyes gave her hope. She assigned them roles. Sophie would lead the internal investigation, Lily would work with their most trusted employees to keep operations running, and Emma would help Amelia piece together a counter strategy. A war of shadows. Victor didn't make it easy. Anonymous threats flooded their inboxes, and Amelia's most trusted allies began to turn against her, swayed by bribes or fear. One evening, A courier delivered a package containing a shattered replica of Amelia's iconic necklace, a silent message that he intended to break her family, piece by piece. But for the first time, Amelia wasn't fighting alone. Sophie uncovered a paper trail leading directly to Victor's shell companies. Lily worked day and night to keep employees loyal, reminding them of the family's values. Even Emma, still frail, used her tech savvy to monitor the digital threats Victor had planted. Just as they thought they had the upper hand, Amelia received a chilling phone call. Victor's voice dripped with malice. "You think you've won, Amelia? You don't even know who your real enemies are." The word sent a shiver down her spine. Could someone within their circle be working against them? Had Victor infiltrated their defenses in ways they couldn't see? As Amelia hung up, the weight of the battle ahead became clear. Would the family's newfound unity withstand the storm? Or would betrayal from within destroy them before they could reclaim their legacy? The power of love, a family reclaimed. Amelia stood at the window of her mansion, staring out at the sprawling cityscape below. Her reflection in the glass mirrored a woman who had built an empire from nothing, yet now felt the foundation cracking beneath her feet. The walls of her legacy were closing in, and for the first time, she felt the crushing weight of uncertainty. Victor Sterling, her most ruthless rival, had orchestrated a campaign to destroy her life's work, and the media had latched onto every shred of scandal, dragging her name through the mud. Her company was faltering, and her family, still mending its fragile bonds, was at risk of breaking under the pressure. A call to arms. Late one night, Sophie found Amelia alone in the boardroom, her head in her hands. The sight of their once indomitable mother, now so vulnerable, sent a pang through Sophie's heart. She placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder.
"You don't have to carry this alone anymore," Sophie said softly. Amelia looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's too late. I failed. I failed you all."
"No, you haven't," Sophie replied firmly. "This isn't just your fight, it's ours. You taught us to be strong, and now it's time we show you that strength." Lily and Emma joined them, their presence radiating determination. "We're a team now," Lily said, her voice resolute. "We'll rebuild this together."
The fight begins.
The sisters threw themselves into action. Sophie tackled the financial chaos, poring over mountains of documents to uncover hidden assets and identify weak spots in their defenses. Her sharp mind and strategic thinking began to restore order to the crumbling empire. Lily, the creative soul, worked tirelessly to reshape the company's tarnished image. She spearheaded heartfelt campaigns that highlighted the company's contributions to the community, rekindling public trust. Her ability to connect with people's emotions became the key to winning back the hearts of investors and clients.
Emma, though still recovering from her illness, refused to be sidelined. From her laptop, she uncovered a trove of incriminating emails and financial records that exposed Victor's underhanded schemes. Her findings provided the ammunition they needed to strike back.
Amelia watched in awe as her daughters rose to the occasion, their combined efforts reigniting a spark of hope she thought had long since been extinguished.
A family united.
In the late hours of the night, the mansion became a hive of activity. The dining room table, once used for lavish meals, was now covered in blueprints, financial charts, and stacks of documents. The sisters worked side by side, their laughter and banter cutting through the tension. Amelia joined them, rediscovering a part of herself she had buried under years of relentless ambition. For the first time in decades, she felt what it meant to be part of a family, a true family, not bound by obligation or duty, but by love and shared purpose. One night, as they celebrated a small victory, a successful investor meeting, Amelia raised her glass. "I've spent so many years chasing success, thinking it was the only thing that mattered. But sitting here with all of you, I realize now that our bond is my greatest achievement."
The sisters clinked their glasses, their smiles reflecting the strength of their renewed connection. Victor strikes back.
Just as things began to stabilize, Victor launched a final, desperate attack. A leaked report falsely accused Carter Industries of corruption, reigniting the media frenzy. The sisters and Amelia knew they were on the brink of losing everything again. Instead of retreating, they stood their ground. Together, they orchestrated a press conference presenting undeniable evidence of Victor's treachery. In a dramatic twist, Emma unveiled a live feed of Victor being arrested for fraud, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own lies. The moment was electric. The press, the shareholders, and the public were left speechless. The Carter family had not only survived, they had triumphed. As the chaos subsided, Amelia looked at her daughters with pride and gratitude. The company was saved, but more importantly, so was their family. Yet, a lingering question remained. With their newfound strength, could they face the shadows of their past that still loomed? The story wasn't over. A new chapter was just beginning, and the road ahead promised both challenges and triumphs. Could they harness the power of their unity to build a brighter future, or would old wounds threaten to unravel everything they had fought for? The turning point, a celebration to remember. The Carter mansion had never looked so alive. Golden chandeliers bathed the grand hall in a warm, almost celestial glow. Tables draped in pristine white linen were adorned with cascading floral arrangements, and the gentle hum of music filled the air. This was no ordinary night. It was a testament to triumph, family, and healing. For Amelia and her daughters, this was a moment that symbolized their resilience, their fight, and the unyielding love that had brought them together. Emma stood at the center of the celebration, her emerald green dress catching the light like a precious gem. Her once fragile frame now radiated vitality, and her laughter, clear and melodic, rang through the room, drawing smiles from everyone around her. She was no longer the girl lying weak and pale in a hospital bed. She was a symbol of hope reborn. Sophie and Lily flanked her, each radiant in their own right. Sophie, ever composed, exchanged confident words with investors and employees, her sharp wit and determination captivating the room. Lily, with her artistic flair and magnetic charm, moved effortlessly between guests, making connections with warmth and grace. Amelia's speech, a heart laid bare. Amelia Carter, the matriarch who had once been feared as much as she was admired, now stood before her guests, her vulnerability unmistakable. She raised her glass, her voice steady but thick with emotion. Tonight, she began, the room falling silent, is not just a celebration of Emma's recovery. It is a celebration of this family, of the strength and courage my daughters have shown in the face of adversity. Her gaze swept over the crowd, but her focus was on the three young women standing together. Sophie, Lily, Emma, you've taught me what true strength means. Not the strength of building empires or fighting battles in boardrooms, but the strength of holding on to love even when it feels impossible. Amelia paused, her voice breaking slightly. For years, I thought I could only protect myself by pushing others away. But you've shown me that real power lies in connection, in vulnerability, in family. I am proud of each of you in ways words cannot express. The applause was thunderous, but Amelia hardly noticed. Her tears glistened in the golden light, and for the first time in decades, she allowed herself to feel the fullness of joy, sorrow, and gratitude all at once. A quiet moment on the balcony. As the festivities wound down, Amelia and her daughters found themselves on the balcony, overlooking the city. The cool night air wrapped around them as they gazed at the glittering skyline, the world seeming both vast and intimate. This feels surreal, Sophie admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this. None of us could, Lily said, leaning against the railing. Her eyes, though tired, sparkled with quiet determination. But look at us now. We've come so far. Emma, her cheeks still flushed with the evening's excitement, smiled softly. And we still have so much to do. Amelia stood a step behind, watching her daughters with a mixture of pride and humility. She had built a fortune, commanded respect, and achieved what many only dreamed of, yet nothing compared to this, her family, whole and together at last. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. Whatever challenges come next, we face them together. No more running, no more walls, just us. The first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The four women stood side by side, their silhouettes framed by the rising sun. It was a moment of peace, of quiet strength, but also of anticipation. For as much as they had overcome, the road ahead was still uncertain. Would the strength they had found in each other be enough to face the future? And could the shadows of the past truly be left behind, or would they return to test their resolve once more? This was not the end, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with promise, trials, and a love that would not falter. The Carter family's story was far from over, and the best, as well as the most challenging, was yet to come. A new journey, a legacy reborn. The conference room of the Carter headquarters shimmered under the soft glow of chandeliers, but it was the warmth of family, not opulence, that filled the space. Amelia Carter, poised and elegant as ever, stood at the head of the table, flanked by Sophie, Lily, and Emma. The air was charged with emotion, a mix of anticipation, gratitude, and pride. In Amelia's hands was the final document to transfer her empire to her daughters, a gesture that symbolized not only trust but also the culmination of their incredible journey. Amelia's voice, firm yet tinged with emotion, broke the silence. This company has been my life's work, born from sacrifice, sweat, and at times, heartbreak. I poured everything I had into building it, but today I stand here knowing the greatest treasure I've ever created isn't this empire, it's you three. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed the document to Sophie, the eldest, whose sharp mind and unwavering determination had become the backbone of their family's business endeavors. "Sophie," Amelia said, her voice softening, "you've shown me what it means to be resilient. You lead with strength and vision, and I trust you to guide this company with wisdom." Sophie took the document with a firm grip, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I won't let you down, Mom. This legacy means everything to me." Next was Lily, the creative dreamer, whose innovative spirit had breathed new life into the Carter brand. Amelia turned to her middle daughter with a tender smile. "Lily, you remind me that success is nothing without passion. You've given this family and this company a soul, something I had long forgotten in my pursuit of ambition." Lily grinned, her artistic flair evident even in her choice of attire. "We're going to make this company shine like never before, Mom. Just watch." Finally, Amelia knelt slightly to face Emma, the youngest and once the most fragile, now standing tall with newfound confidence. "Emma," Amelia whispered, cupping her daughter's hands, "you taught me the power of compassion, of seeing the humanity in every choice we make. Your heart will guide this family to places I could never imagine." Emma hugged her tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You've given me everything, Mom. It's my turn to give back." The legacy continues. Months later, the Carter legacy flourished under the united leadership of the three sisters. Sophie's strategic brilliance expanded their business into international markets, while Lily's creative innovations captured the world's imagination. Emma, driven by her empathy, established community outreach programs, ensuring their empire gave back to the people who had supported them along the way. Amelia watched it all unfold with quiet pride. Though retired, she became the heart of the family's restored estate, hosting gatherings, mentoring her daughters, and finally allowing herself the joy of simply being a mother and grandmother. A moment of celebration. One evening, the Carter estate came alive with celebration. The garden was transformed into a fairy tale setting, with twinkling lights, flowing champagne, and the laughter of friends, family, and loyal employees. At the center of it all stood Amelia and her daughters, radiating joy and fulfillment. As the festivities reached their peak, Amelia clinked her glass gently to call for attention. "Tonight, we celebrate not just success but love, unity, and the power of family. My daughters have shown me that true wealth isn't in profits or prestige, it's in the bonds we share and the legacy we leave behind." Sophie raised her glass, her voice steady and proud. "To Mom, for building the foundation that allowed us to dream bigger." Lily added, "To us for proving that together we can overcome anything." Emma, ever the emotional anchor, concluded, "And to the future, for the endless possibilities it holds." A sunrise of hope. As the party wound down, the family gathered on the terrace to watch the sunrise. The horizon painted a breathtaking canvas of gold and crimson, mirroring the promise of a bright future. Amelia sat between her daughters, their hands intertwined as they shared quiet reflections. "I used to think the sunrise was just the start of another long day," Amelia mused, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "But now I see it as a symbol of hope, a reminder that every ending brings a new beginning." Sophie rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "And this beginning is ours, together." Lily leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Imagine what we'll accomplish next." Emma squeezed her mother's hand. "Whatever it is, we'll do it as a family." The four women sat there, bathed in the light of a new day, their hearts full and their spirits ready. Their journey had been one of loss, struggle, and rediscovery, but in the end they had found something far greater than wealth. They had found each other. Together they were unstoppable. Together they were home.